I'm not gonna lie, the Prince of Persia remake looks really concerning, to be honest. So it feels good to say that we're back. Welcome back to the channel in which we judge games before they come out. That's pretty much what we do here, that's our forte.
If you want the fucking brawl, come down to Nevic Hospitality, I'll come out of my house and I'll break your fucking legs, you little prick! Now what do you say? Now what do you fucking say?
But I mean, we're here with good reason today because we're going to talk about the new Prince of Persia remake. I say new, the trailer came out a while ago and I'm only just talking about it now, but whoa! Look at that dislike ratio on the trailer. People are not happy about this at all. And to be honest, I really don't blame them. I was watching this trailer and I was like, come on, when are we going to see the new graphics? You know, when are we going to see the actual remake? And it turns out that the remake looks like absolute trash. It's such a shame because I don't think Ubisoft has actually talked about Prince of Persia in years, to be honest. I haven't seen anything about it for a long time. And now all of a sudden in 2020, the leaked gameplay of Prince of Persia Redemption leaks, and we also get an announcement for this new remake, if you want to call it that. Prince of Persia is a much-loved franchise. Before the days of Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia was all we had, really. And it's just a shame to see Ubisoft releasing another pointless remaster. And they know the demand for another Prince of Persia game. Everyone wants to see Prince of Persia back, especially after Assassin's Creed has recently fell off and gone down the absolute shitter. But they just couldn't control themselves, could they? They couldn't announce a next-gen Prince of Persia game, could they? No. That would have been way too simple and straightforward, and probably would have been successful. They had to go back and cash in on nostalgia. And you know what? I wouldn't have actually been that bothered about it if it was a good remake. But by today's standards of remakes, this just doesn't cut it, does it? Before we get into the industry standard of remakes though, let's have a look at Ubisoft's history with remakes, because it's not a very good one. Forgive me, I say remakes, I mean remasters, because what Ubisoft do are definitely not remakes. They have a history of releasing very underwhelming remasters, starting with the Ezio collection in 2016, which, fair enough, it did bring to life a game that we all hold close to our hearts, but it's cashing in on that nostalgia. Let's be honest, the Ezio collection doesn't look that good. Like, it's a bit of an upgrade, there's a few better textures, the lighting's a bit better. And the same could be said for the Assassin's Creed 3 remaster and Assassin's Creed Rogue remastered, which, to be honest, I don't know why Rogue was ever remastered. It didn't need remastering. I think they just released it because they were like, oh, look, there's this weird subset of fans that really like Rogue, so let's like remaster it for those so we can get a fuck ton of money from them. And that brings us to today with the Prince of Persia remake they're releasing, and I was really excited at first when I heard this because Ubisoft haven't mentioned Prince of Persia in a long time, only really referencing it every now and then, and it seemed to me like the video game industry was building up to a sort of reboot of Prince of Persia. Especially after this Prince of Persia Redemption leak, I think everyone was getting very excited to see if Ubisoft was planning on announcing a new Prince of Persia game. I mean, technically they did, but it just wasn't what any of us wanted or expected. And as I said previously, the fans are not happy. Look at that like to dislike ratio. Pretty bad. That's a pretty bad reception. So why are people so upset? Why is this so outrageous? Why is the Prince of Persia remake not good enough? Because to many of you, it may look completely fine. And to be honest, it probably will be a bit of fun going back and playing Sands of Time again. It's a classic game. You know, it's one of the first games that I played properly. It will be interesting to see how they've reworked some of the environments and characters and visuals. I do want to say that I acknowledge that they've actually made new animations for this game. It is technically a remake if you think about it. I have been giving it a lot of shit over the course of this video, but Ubisoft India have at least put in the effort of creating new animations and really reworking the lighting. It's Ubisoft's first actual remaster slash remake, you know, it's not just releasing the same game again, but with slightly better textures and slightly different lighting. At least they've actually put different animations in this time, which is good to see. And you know, if you see gameplay of the original Prince of Persia Sands of Time and stack it against the remake, obviously the remake looks leagues better than the first game. It's bound to, it's 17 years later. The point of this video isn't to shit on the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. It's not to just call it bad, it's not to say that it looks bad, because there's actually certain shots in the trailer that look really good. It's just, it doesn't look good enough or as good as other remakes have in recent years. I think the art direction in the remake is really disappointing, considering if you stack it up against the original game, there's this really nice sort of cartoony, unique art style to it, and they've completely lost that in the remake. It just looks sort of more realistic, more cookie cutter, more what you'd expect from a game, whereas I quite like games that have that nice unique art style, developers that like to play around with the art style of their game to make it stand out from the rest of them. Yeah, I think it's a massive shame that Sands of Time has lost its original art style, because that's what stood out to me so much originally. And given the fact that Ubisoft are as big as a company as they are, you'd expect a lot more from one of the most prominent developers in the industry. By the industry standard today of remakes, this doesn't look good enough, and there's not enough changed about it. You may have been able to get away with this in 2016, but with the remakes that have been coming out over the last few years, it just isn't good enough. Let's look at remakes like the Final Fantasy VII remakes, the Shadow of the Colossus remake, the Resident Evil remakes that have come out over the recent years, and the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy was also a really great remake that I think did a really good job of bringing an old game series back to life. How about the upcoming Demon's Souls remake, which looks absolutely amazing? We're going to bring that up a little bit later on because there's some similarities between Demon's Souls and the Prince of Persia remake, but graphically and mechanically, Demon's Souls has been remade from the ground up, which is what you want to see from these remakes. They want to actually feel different to the original experience. There's so many remakes that have come out that really show the value of remakes. Lots and lots of changes, and these stark changes made the games worth the remake. If they look pretty much the same, then it's not really worth recreating the game. All Ubisoft have done is slapped a new coat of paint on it, and made some new animations and called it a remake, and I don't think that solicits a remake in my opinion. One remake in particular that blows every other remake out of the water is the Final Fantasy VII remake. This is a game that I'm yet to play, but you can tell the years of dedication and experience that have gone into this game to bring fans of the original Final Fantasy VII an experience that not only pays homage to the original game, but feels like a completely different game entirely. This is a remake that was worth the time to create because it's a mixture of old and new. Games that just take an old game and change the graphics, to be honest, I don't see that as a remake at all. It's not worth your time to play because you've already experienced that old game so many times. Granted, it can be nice to come back and play one of your favourite games that's been updated, but to be honest, I'm sick of seeing remasters at this point. It's just a way to cash in on nostalgia, and Ubisoft know exactly what they're doing with this remake. Oh yeah, they know exactly what they're doing, so much so that they've added a pre-order bonus into it, as if you couldn't think it could get any worse. They've added a pre-order bonus where you get a weapon set, a classic skin for the prince, and can we get a drum roll please? This is the big one, the ability to change between classic and new graphics. Yeah, you heard me correctly. They've locked the ability to change between old and new graphics behind a fucking paywall, something that was completely free in other remasters. The fact that you can turn to old graphics alone is quite indicative of the fact that this is more of a remaster than it is a remake. If it was a true remake, you wouldn't be able to go back to old graphics in the first place. The differences would be that stark that there'd be no way to implement this. And that's one of the reasons why Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake isn't as much of a remake as Ubisoft would like you to believe. I mean, could you imagine randomly if in the Final Fantasy VII Remake they were like, oh yeah, if you pre-order this game, you get an option to go back to old graphics. It just can't be done with the amount of work and effort that's gone into the Final Fantasy Remake to set it apart from the original game. That's what I'm trying to say. A remake is only worth it if the actual experience is different to the original game that it's based on. Otherwise, you're just reskinning it, aren't you? Anyway, that's beside the point. What is wrong with you, Ubisoft? What's going through the higher-ups' heads when they greenlight these sort of things? It doesn't make any sense to me. How can you come to the conclusion that locking that behind a paywall or a pre-order wall is a good idea? It's a terrible idea, an absolutely terrible idea. and it's backfired. Although Prince of Persia isn't the only upcoming remake that does have a pre-order bonus, Demon's Souls actually has a pre-order bonus, which is something that I'm really surprised to see, considering Demon's Souls, much like the Dark Souls games, rely a lot on stats to get you through that experience. Obviously, player skill always trumps out the stats that you have in the game, but off the bat, if you pre-order the game, you basically have 2 armor sets, a weapon, and a bunch of other items that are going to help you out right off the bat. And in a game like Demon's Souls, that makes no sense. No point in putting these arbitrary items in that you can't actually get in the base game unless you pre-order it. Yeah, it just doesn't sit right with me that there's a pre-order bonus in a remake. It doesn't really make much sense to me. It's a game you've already played. Just put the new content in the game already, surely. You don't have to lock it behind some form of paywall. I'm aware that was a bit of a tangent, but we're here to talk about the Prince of Persia remake. Let's leave Demon's Souls out of that, that's for another video. People aren't excited about the Prince of Persia remake. To be honest, since it was announced, I haven't seen anyone talk about it. I was planning on making this video when the news released, but to be honest, I couldn't really be asked to, and I was almost debating not making this video at all, considering no one's talking about this game whatsoever. But to be honest, I think it highlights something that's been happening in the video game industry since around 2015-16 with these remasters and remakes being all over the fucking place. How companies are cashing in on that nostalgia to basically make a quick buck. And honestly, when comparing this to something like the Final Fantasy VII remake or even the Resident Evil remakes that have come out over the last couple of years, I know which one I'd rather put my money in. And I guess that's the message of this video in a way, if you want to have some moral message from it. Please be aware of what companies are doing and the effort they put into these remakes and remasters, because it's very easy for them to pull the wool over your eyes with nostalgia when all they're doing is just essentially slapping a new coat of paint on it and releasing the exact same thing to you again only 17 years later. Look, next video will be a lot more positive. I know we've been doing a lot of shitting on things recently, and I don't upload that often as it is, but next video will be about Ghost of Tsushima. I'm a bit late on it, but honestly, at this point, I don't really care. I just want to talk about the game. It's really good, and I've also got a couple of things to get off my chest regarding it, because there's some parts of it that fell a bit short for me, but we'll get around to that when the actual video comes out. Anyway, that's me for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and take care.
Hey, so you know that feature that was in the Halo anniversary games, where you could basically switch simultaneously, seamlessly between all the new graphics? Oh yeah, that was a really good feature. It allowed people to see the difference in environment and the amount of work that had been done on the game to make it more modernized. Yeah, take that feature and stick it behind a fucking pre-order bonus, because if people don't buy this fucking game, pre-order the fuck out of it right fucking now, they will never get this feature.
You know what, man? This is why we hired you right here, bro. This is exactly why we fucking hired you. You know what it's like to be a Ubisoft employee. You know how to scam money out of people. You're getting a promotion, son.